Any questions? I'll give you some time to think. Well, it doesn't seem like anybody has any questions, so yep. Is that a question?
Yeah, I guess what all is like, do you in this upcoming week, is the syllabus going to stay the same or is it going to change? Or that's my question, basically.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so let's bring that up and take a look at it. So right now, um, it's probably going to play by ear depending on where everybody is. So I'm going to bring up the syllabus that we looked at last time. And so currently we're down here at Flutter Part 5, Assets and Images. And so I think what I'd like to do, well, there's two things that I'd like to do at some point, and it could be this week, sooner probably better than later. Though one thing I'd like to do is have people kind of show us their calculator layouts. So we could do that with people individually going live on their computers, and those of you that are interested anyway and have maybe put a lot of work into it, it'd be fun to see those at some point. And then secondly, uh, you can see there on, let me zoom in. So right here on the April 1st, we were planning to have App 1 reviews. So I think that probably could still be accomplished, the App 1 assignment that I've given you guys. I'm sure people have made some, hopefully, you've made some progress towards that. Maybe we could go around each group, and maybe someone from that group can just say if you would be up to or ready to do a live. In fact, what I'm going to do is just bring up all the groups here, just the group names. And oh, somebody has a phone call. So let's see. And I'm going to back up here and bring this over. Just one second so I can get the group names. Here we go, group projects. Okay, so I just realized I'm streaming this. So I'm just going to go down. I'm not going to bring the names over because we're live streaming, but I will just go through the groups. So Scratch group. Would you guys be up to a App One review on Wednesday?
Uh, I mean, we could. We have the wireframe all made out and stuff. And we've been setting up the UML and stuff for that. So we
Oh,
could.
okay, cool. How about Team TOO? Anybody from Team TOO online?
We have mockups partially done.
Okay.
We don't have any code written that I know of.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for code for app assignment one. It's more mock-ups, and if we go back to the, in fact, I'll go bring that up here. I think I've got that in every project. Let's see
On
here.
that syllabus, it says App 1 Design UI Code.
Oh, okay, yeah. So basically, it's the all right. So you're correct. That's the UI. The code would just be the code for laying out maybe some of the interface. I wouldn't necessarily expect it all to be done.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's move on. Thanks for pointing that out. Team one. Anybody from Team one on? Sounds like somebody's trying to connect. Okay, so we don't have Team one here. Let's move on to Team three.
I'm here.
Cool.
We, as we are,
Hmm.
um, we have some pseudocode and a couple of wireframes laid out, but I think by Wednesday we'd be ready to present what you're asking for with a little bit of more defined layout.
Okay, sounds cool. How about AC unit?
Yeah, so we got our basic, um, we kind of got the basics down, and we got to work on it a little bit more. So now mostly, but we'll be done by
Okay, cool. And Ajax.
I think we'll be ready by Wednesday. Right now we
Okay.
have some UI code done, but not all
Hmm.
of it. And we have our UML and design pretty well mapped out.
Cool. And Team Digit 2.
We have mostly everything done except like a graphical representation, but we could have that done by Wednesday.
Cool. And Team Tetra.
Cool. We have a UML that's great, and we also have really rough animations for all the screens, the settings, the play screen, splash screen, all of that. So we can show everything that we have, which is quite a bit.
Cool. So let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we got 8 teams and 50 minutes. So, and I think what's cool about this is that so if within your teams you figure out who's going to go live or who has the capability to go live, and we'll go down the list and try do an app one review, just see a state of where each team is, and we'll go live one at a time instead of everybody going live at once and uh, breaking the system. So sounds like people are in a good place where I'd expect you to be at this point. So good work, keep it up, and we'll plan for that Wednesday. Um, I'm not sure if the nav and routing stuff will be ready for Friday. I may need to flip that with the following week with the App 2 work day, but certainly what I will want to have is some the App 2 assignment up for you guys so you can start working on the next part by Wednesday. Okay, enough of the syllabus unless anybody else has questions on the App 1 review. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to the next. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to start, this is called Asteroids, Images, and Assets. I'm going to start by talking about the Asteroids case study, but I'm going to start talking about assets and how they're managed in Flutter. So one of the first, and I'm going to do it through the case study of my Asteroid app. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. Actually, I'm going to jump to that slide so you can see it. So if you haven't already, you can go look at the Asteroids case study, which is up on WhitGit. So if you sign in to WhitGit online, bring this up over here. Whoops, not full screen. It's underneath the in-class examples, IC10 Asteroids. And under there, we've got several files. Now you notice that, in fact, this is a good place to look at it right from here. If I go to my assets and images folder, there's a bunch of images all in that same folder, and that's a pretty straightforward way of doing it. It's actually a little cooler to look at it with the File Explorer because then we can actually see let's go to my desktop, Asteroids, and then we go to the assets folder and images, and now you can see all the images for my Asteroids game that I pulled together. So these are all my assets. You can see the background that I was thinking about using at one point, and then I switched to the background that it currently has. When you create an app, you're going to have to put all your images somewhere. And the main place they're going to go is under this Assets Images folder. But more specifically, you can actually specify where those assets are going to go using the pubspec YAML file. So let me go back to my web page there. So if we go back and look at the folder, let's go up a folder, and actually too far, look at the pubspec YAML file. So right here, so this file is probably one of the more important files in a Flutter application, because in the pubspec YAML you're telling Flutter what versions of Flutter you're using, what other versions of packages you're using, and so forth. So in my example here, I'm actually using a package called Flame. It's the Flame game engine library, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you move on down and you go down to the assets portion, you'll see I have my assets listed here, assets, and that's one way you tell Flutter where the assets are going to be. Now, if I'm going to bring up this in Visual Studio Code, because it's a little easier for me to just play with it and edit it there. So let's see, start code. There we go. And this should open up already to my, I think the last one I had open was my Asteroids. Yep, there it is. So if I go look at that pubspec YAML, get rid of this. Zoom in a little bit. And right here, I can specify assets in a different way. So I wouldn't have to put a full folder like this. If I do a folder like this, everything in that folder will be accessible. I could also do something, individual assets like my image dot JPEG or something like that. And you can list individual assets. I'm going to do that because I don't want to mess mine up. But you can list individual assets here that you want to bring into your project. This is easiest for me because I know all of those images will be accessible then in my project. Now, one other thing I want to point out that since I'm here and I was just thinking about this, I'm going to bring up my PowerShell. So some of you have had some issues where, let me zoom in on that, make the font size bigger. Okay, some of you were having some problems when you were trying to run a Flutter package and it wouldn't run. You would type Flutter run and it says can't connect, can't find the device. Even though the Android emulator would come up, everything would work, but nothing would run. Let me back up here and I'll show you how to fix that. So if I come up here, so in fact I don't think I have an example, maybe I do. No. So if I type Flutter So when I downloaded my Asteroids, the first thing I had to do was switch to the dev channel. And then I did a Flutter upgrade. Now, the next thing you need to do is a Flutter create. If you forget to do this, and notice I messed up because I did a Flutter create and I didn't have a directory. So the Flutter create command requires that you have a directory that you want to create the Flutter project in. And if you give it an empty project, it will just create a beginning Flutter app. If you give it an existing project, it says it will try to repair the project. Okay, so you don't want to forget the Flutter create. If you do the Flutter create, it will repair that project, and then it loads all these libraries that are needed, and then you'll be able to connect to your device at that point after you do a Flutter create. So that's just, I was thinking about that in terms of the Asteroid, because I know some people had had some issues with that. So back to our Asteroids case study. Sorry about that glare from white to black. I'll have to figure that out. So you can basically bundle all your assets inside this one folder. There's other ways you can do this as well. And if you go look at the assets and images web page right here on Flutter's website, they tell you exactly how you can go and add assets. So to get to this web page, you just go over to the development user interface down to under assets and images. Then they also talk about how to load assets. Once you have an asset, you can access it through this asset bundle widget, and that lets you like load strings or load images or things like that. To load an image, let's go on down here. Once you have your image like that, you can actually let's go on down, load an images using an asset image class like this. Now, I didn't do it this way for my Flutter app because I ended up using a different game engine. So what I did, if we go up and look at the dependencies, right there it is. I use the Flame game engine. So if you go look up Flame, it's up on GitHub. So it's flameengine.org. And Flame is a really nice utility. Like if you're wanting to build a Flutter game, the Flame game engine is pretty cool. So they show you how to set up your PubSpec YAML, and then they show you the structure. So like here, you can just say Flame audio play, and it'll play a MP3 or an MP4 or whatever, or Flame images load. So this is a lot easier to deal with loading images if you have some game engine like Flame or some other utility or some other engine that's for dealing with assets. So if you are going to want to play an MP3, you need to put that in your assets folder as well. Notice I just put assets images and it loaded all of them, and I had access to any of them I wanted. But you can play audio as well. You can do images. When you go to actually use an image, you can then just simply make what's called a sprite. And you can say sprite and then the name of the image, and it will load it. So later on, I'll show you how I actually use the images inside my Asteroids class. The other nice thing about this Flame, about the Flame game engine, is that the game loop is really easy to use. You just make yourself a game, then you run the app, and then it will take care of handling pretty much everything for you, although you have to have callbacks and stuff to update when things happen. So we'll go take a look at that. All right, so let's back out. If we go look at my top level for the game, so you'll notice here in my game I've imported the Flame package. I also have imported gestures because I want to do interactivity like we've done for the calculator. And then of course I imported all the different components. So I have my main game class, but then I have a ship class, a bullet class, an asteroid class, and a game component class, like that. So down here in my game is basically going to keep track of everything for the game itself. So I've got a game constructor, which creates the ship. I've got the canvas. The canvas is where everything's going to be rendered. And I have a collision function that determines if two rectangles are going to collide with one another. And then I have the game update function. And so in the game update with the Flame game engine, it repeatedly calls this update function. And what I have in there is basically a creation timer that just counts down, and when that creation timer reaches a particular point, when it reaches a value of greater than or equal to 4, what it will do is it will actually create a new asteroid object, add it to my list of objects, and add that to the game. So the object list is like the state of my game, and the object list is right here. It's basically just a list of game component objects. And so I can add whatever object I want into that list of game component objects. So it's just like it's the same idea as walking around the adventure game and picking up things and adding them to the list. I'm basically just adding objects to this list, and then they're going to be, everything that list is going to be managed. So now to check for collisions between my bullets and asteroids, I have a double nested loop. So for each outer object, I'm going to check whether it collides with an inner object. So object I, does it collide with object J? So it's really going through and checking whether every pair of objects, whether they collide or not. So I get object A, the rectangle A comes from object I, and the rectangle B comes from object J, and I take those two rectangles to see whether they collide. And that's that collides function I showed you. If they do, then I just figure out if one was an asteroid and the other was a bullet. And if that is the case, then I tell the asteroid to explode. So this is where Dart uses what's known as polymorphism, like you can do in C++. I say object list of I as an asteroid and tell it to explode. And then, of course, I need to remove the bullet from the list. And so that bullet will be removed. Now, when an asteroid explodes, it just makes a bunch of mini-me's, mini asteroids, and adds them all to the object list. And it removes its original image itself. If two asteroids, so if object I was an asteroid and object J was an asteroid, then I just have them exchange momentum with one another, like that. And then what I do is, oh yeah, this was an interesting thing. Now notice back here, when I tell an object to be removed, I don't actually remove it from the list immediately. And the reason for that is because that would mess up my for loops here. Because my for loops are expecting to run for a certain length, a certain number of objects. And so when those two for loops are running, they're going to do their thing, and they're going to mark everything that should be removed by setting the flag true to tell it to be removed. Down here then, I use the remove where function. It's kind of like the map function. Takes the list and it runs it through, and it passes this lambda function. And each object that has the remove boolean set to true will be removed from that list. And then what I do is I tell the upper class, the class that this derived from, to update the canvas and the game. So it calls the superclass had an update method, and that update method gets called to tell everything to redraw itself. So that's pretty much it for how the game objects are handled. Of course, I have a function called tap input. This function is going to respond to a user tapping on the screen. And what I do is I get the position of where they tapped, and I use that to determine where the ship should go and also whether the ship is firing or not. If they tap and drag, then I use that to change the ship's direction as well. And when they tap, if they tap and hold down, the ship will keep firing. But as soon as you let up, it turns the firing off. And then finally, of course, whenever the window is resized, then each object, this method resize gets called to let me know how big the external environment is. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the main class. Let's go and see how the assets were handled. So if I go, let's go look at a game component. So a game component extends the sprite component, which comes from the Flame library. And the game component then, really all it does is sets these parameters. So it sets it calls this function, which is part of the Flame library, to say, hey, this is the size of this game component. And then I also have its velocity, whether it's going to be removed or not, which we saw this earlier. And then we have the size that it currently is. Okay, let's go back. Let's look at the asteroid then. So the asteroid is a game component, but what we want to see is how it gets its image loaded. So here, because it is a game component, when I construct an asteroid, I tell it how big I want it to be. That's the component size. And I also call the super constructor and pass in the image. And that asteroid.png then is going to automatically get loaded because it's part of a game component for me. So it's really straightforward. I don't have to do anything fancy. All I have to do is provide those images in my assets folder, and then the game library takes care of that for me. So that's the high level overview of how the assets and all that are handled within the Asteroid game. Let's see, if we go back to main, the very main function where everything starts, in order to get those images in, I have to tell Flame, hey, these are all the images I want loaded. And then I just say, Flame images load all, and then I list every single image that I want available to me when I'm within the game. And then I get the dimensions of the game, and I make a new game and pass those dimensions in, and those dimensions are used. Now, the overall scaffolding for my game is really straightforward because I just have the body container, I have the asset image, and I tell it to fit, the image that it's working in. One thing that's cool about these, let's go back here. Whoops. What's nice about all of these different, all of the different classes, if you just obviously hover over them, it's going to tell you exactly what's going on, and you guys probably already know that. The other thing that I was talking about was how gestures or interactivity is handled. This is a little different than how it was handled in our calculator. With the Flame game engine, it's really pretty straightforward to add gesture recognizers. You just say Flame util add a gesture recognizer. And this basically is the equivalent of making callbacks, basically. So whenever there's a horizontal drag recognizer, so this is one thing I've been wanting to tell you guys about but haven't really talked about yet. When I make a new object in Dart, that new object is going to get returned right here. Now I can take that object that's returned and I can use this dot dot operator. And what this dot dot operator will do is it will change the onStart method within that object that was returned, and it will give it this lambda function. And once it gives it that lambda function, it returns that whole object again, so this onUpdate can be applied. So essentially we're taking one object and updating its onStart, we're updating its onUpdate, we're updating its onEnd, and we're updating its onCancel method. So we're just setting a bunch of methods right in a row by using those dot dot operator. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, I've been going pretty quickly here. I'd like to stop and back up and see if anybody has questions or something you'd like me to point out. I feel like I'm talking into a black hole. I don't even know if anybody's there. Oh,
when you first pull the asteroid thing, what are the first commands you should run?
Oh, good question. So I'll show you what to do. Let's go back to my let me pull up Visual Studio Code because that's the best way to show it anyway. Okay, so the first thing you should do, obviously, make sure you have all these files. And then secondly, go and make sure that you have the correct terminal. So do View, Command Palette, and you can start typing select default shell, and then make sure you get PowerShell. Okay, once you have PowerShell, you'll make a new terminal. Now I'm sitting here in this Asteroids directory. The very first thing that I should do is I do a Flutter channel dev. So you want to switch to the dev channel. Now, it gave me red because I already was on the dev channel. The other thing you should do too is just do Flutter create, and then a period, like that. Now, what does the period mean? Anybody know what that period means?
It just means this directory, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right. So I go Flutter create, and then the name of the directory in which I want to create my project. And so it's creating it in this current directory. So when I hit enter, now this is where it sometimes will go out and get stuff and update stuff. And if you don't get that command run, then the Flutter run isn't going to work for you. These next two commands here, because they say it says run Flutter Doctor for more information. And you may have heard that system sound in the background. I had my phone connected up and I disconnected it because I was debugging with Flutter, and so if I connect it, then that would be available to me. The other thing you should also run is just make sure and do a Flutter upgrade if you haven't. And that will get all the latest packages and make sure everything's up to date. So, and then you could also do a Flutter pub get. That will look at the YAML file and make sure everything in your YAML file is up to date. Let me go look at my Discord channel and see if I have any notifications or questions. Any other questions?
Are we able to find this code on GitHub?
Which code? The
code for this base game here that you're looking at right now.
Oh yeah, yes. So this game code is right in the PowerPoint presentation, which I'll post. It's on this link right here. So what you can actually do is, well, you know what? I'll paste that. I'll put this command into the Discord channel, so you can actually copy it. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go back to my channel here, and general, here we go. Oops, that's not what I want. Let me go back and get this again. It copied it as a PNG file, and I don't want that. I'm going to make sure it's text. So that's the command I want. And I'll put this in your Discord channel again. Make sure I'm in the right channel. There you go. So if you make a folder and you run that make an empty folder, open PowerShell, run that git clone command in that folder, then it should pull it directly from WitGit. In fact, let's just do this. So I'm going to make a new folder, Asteroid, like that. Zoom in. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to open that with Visual Studio Code. So to do that, of course, I have to start code. And once you start Visual Studio Code, you have an empty code. Now just drag your folder into the window like this. Now that's an empty Asteroid folder. I'm going to set it up. So terminal, new terminal. Make sure, of course, you have a PowerShell. And then you can come and copy that git command from the Discord channel and just paste it in here. In fact, I just did that myself. And that will pull all the code down for you into that folder. Okay, is anybody able to pull besides me?
I was able to get it just fine.
Okay. And you
Yeah, I was able to.
Awesome. So you just do that git clone and pull it just like that. Other people must be pulling right now because it's slowing down. And of course, there we go. And once it's cloned, so the very first thing I would recommend you do is Flutter create dot, right, like that. That will fix any multitude of sins. And notice it also runs a Flutter pub get for you automatically when you do Flutter create. So it does a Flutter pub get that gets all the packages you need. And then it tells you, okay, now you can do a Flutter run. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. First of all, if you go view command palette, you can actually start if you have Flutter updated, you can start where was it? You can start an Android. Maybe I have the Android already running. You could actually, there is a way to start the Android emulator right from there. For some reason, I think I minimized I removed the bottom status bar because I wanted to keep this as clean as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and start the Android SDK the hard way. So start my Android Studio. And then once I start the Android Studio, I'm going to configure the emulator. This one I've already set up. So I click play. Now the emulator's up and running. I'll minimize those two windows. Then I'll go back to my SDK and say Flutter run. And so now, as this is launching, it should connect up. Oh, my build failed. Let's see what happened. Oh, could not. I wonder if I have Java set up on my machine. I got this far before class today, and I don't think that's going to make a difference. Yeah, let me try if it will connect to my phone. So I think what happened here, oh, I know what's wrong. It's a good thing. See, it said right here, I didn't accept the license agreement. Yeah, it says to build this project, accept the SDK license and install the missing components using the Android SDK Studio. So what I haven't done yet is I have to install the Android SDK platform, and let's do that. So it's funny that it lets me get all the way to this stage, and if I go to settings, I think there's the SDK manager, that was it. And It looks like here, looks like that's correct. SDK tools. Yep, that's that. Okay. It looks like they're installed. And SDK platforms. Somewhere I didn't yet accept the, the licensing, and so that's why it won't run. I don't remember exactly how I accepted the licensing. Should work at this point. Let me quickly, well, that's trying another time. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so here what I'm finding is you have not accepted the license when running Gradle. Ah, here we go. Let's try that command. I may have to CD to that folder. Let's try if we can run it. Oh, yep, I'm going to have to CD to that folder. So I'm going to go. Oh, yeah, because I don't have the SDK path set yet. Let's see. Oh, I have to go get the path. I know where to get that. So if I go back to my here it is. I go back to my settings. And then I know where the Android SDK is located. So I'm going to edit this just so I can copy it. Wait. Oh, here we go. Let's just try it this way. It says it's installed. Let's see if we go next. Nothing to do, it's up to date. Well, it could let me sign the agreement. Okay, so I'm going to copy that path and then go back to my window. Okay, so let's see here. There should be a bin folder. Tools bin, that's it. So CD tools. Oh, there's no tools. Oh, build tools. CD. There's nothing in the build tools folder. Licenses. Anyway, I'll have to figure out. I don't remember how I fixed this before right off the top of my head. For whatever reason.
Ken?
Yeah?
I think if you run Flutter Doctor, it should tell you more details.
Thank you. I need the voice of wisdom here. Thanks. Yeah, please jump in. Let's go back to where we were. Actually, I have to be in that folder. So let's go back to this folder. So I have to get my path back. Copy that path, and I can CD back to where I was. There we go. Okay, there it is. That's my problem right here. Android license. Okay, there it is. Visit here for open. So Windows install. Let's see. Update. Okay, set up. Where is the license bit? Let's try this one. Offline, command line tools. There was a quick way. I already did this. Oh. Android Studio. I thought that when I downloaded the Android SDK, it should be okay.
Kent?
Yeah?
So I'm not sure because you're running a Windows machine, but on the Mac, when you download the Android SDK, it doesn't download the SDK manager because it's like a obsolete to go into Android and download the SDK manager.
Yeah,
And
that
that's why. Could that be the issue?
Yes, that very likely could. Let's try it. This is, well, I just downloaded Android Studio. That's 750 meg. That's going to take, I did that. I don't want to do that. Because
Right. It's downloading a package inside of Android Studio. So you open up your existing Android Studio.
Yeah, that's it. That's where it is. And I got to remember which one it was. So configure SDK manager. Do you remember which one of these it was? SDK tools.
I don't know about anyone else, but I've never had a valid license whenever I run the Flutter Doctor, and all my programs seem to run just fine.
Okay.
On my emulator.
So I have the platform tools, the emulator.
When mine was doing this, I needed to select SDK tools obsolete.
Oh. In this list here, SDK tools, I don't see anything obsolete under SDK tools.
You have to uncheck the hide obsolete.
Oh.
The hide obsolete.
Thanks. Android SDK tools. Okay, thanks. There. Now I'm accepting a license. That shouldn't take too long. It's weird how it seems every single time you go through this process, it's different. Slightly different on a different machine. So it's easy to miss something here or there, and it seems really easy, and then you get to the point where it doesn't run. Interesting. I wonder why they have that under obsolete packages. Not sure. Anyway, let's see here. We're actually past the end of class at this point. Sorry about that. should let you guys head out. So you're welcome to hang out here. I'll finish this stream up. We'll get it working. I wanted to go through this process anyway. I was going to try to do it as a video, but I didn't get a chance to build it since I was building videos for other classes. But I wish I had a higher speed download link here, but it might be even slower elsewhere. So while that's going, are there other questions about the Asteroids game or anything like that?
Yeah, I had a question about how you chose to separate your code into separate files.
Ah, good question.
Because that's something we're thinking about in our project.
Yeah, I highly recommend this. So let's go back to the lib file. Actually, where was this? There it is. I'm in the wrong folder. Let's go here. Oh, this is a... Oh, hey, there, get packages. It's letting me get packages. I'm in the wrong... No wonder I couldn't find it. I was in the wrong terminal here. Let's see. There we go. So, oh, I didn't try... I was trying to do a run on... Let me go close that other one. Whoops. Sorry, I'm jumping around. My bad. I'm closing this other window that I started from scratch. Let's come back here to my real Asteroids window. This one has, in fact, that makes me wonder, the one that I did a git on, if it has everything in it. Of course, now I can't get at my I'm going to have to get at my folders through the desktop here. So desktop, I had Asteroid. Look at that. That's the one that I did a git on. Oh, I was in the complete wrong folder. I should have been down here under IC10 Asteroids. When I did a git, I didn't realize it pulled it into a subfolder, and that really messed things up for me. I'm thinking it should have run if I had opened the correct folder, the folder correctly. And I probably wouldn't have had to do this install. But let's go ahead and try it anyway. So I'm going to go back to Asteroid, where I was, and I'm going to open the IC10 Asteroid. I should have double checked. I didn't realize I had it in a subfolder. So VS Code, start that. And now I'm going to drag the subfolder into there, the IC10 Asteroid. Now, if I look at my lib files, things look much better. So now if I go terminal, new terminal, let's try this again. So I'm going to say Flutter create dot. That should fix things up. And then I need to say Flutter. I need to switch to the dev channel because that's what I developed it on. Flutter channel dev. And then I'm going to say Flutter, let's do upgrade just in case. And then Flutter, Flutter run. Let's I either do Flutter or Gluter or Glutter or Clutter, everything but Flutter. Okay, let's hope that I have my Android. Yep, it's up. Oh. Okay, well, this may be hopefully what's wrong, but now we won't know whether it's because we installed the obsolete tools or because I was in the wrong folder. Probably because I was in the wrong folder, but it could be the obsolete tools too. Anyway, thanks to everybody for your suggestions. This is looking much more satisfactory. Anyway, it kind of illustrates how you can always end up running into problems in computer science, that things are never straightforward. There's always going to be some little side path you can take. Any questions? Sorry, I know I need to let people go because you got other classes, but I'm just going to hang out here and answer questions if people have them.
I'm sure you've already specified this in the email or something, but is there like a Flutter installation walkthrough on WinGit or something?
Okay, yeah, that's what I was talking about at the start of class, and I had talked about making one of those. This is about as close to it as I've gotten so far. I've gotten the last piece. The only part that you're missing is downloading Flutter from the very beginning. So there is the PowerPoint that takes you through the first steps, and I did find a mistake in that, but it gets you going. Let me go ahead and bring that up and show you exactly where that is. So if you go to our class Blackboard, well, this is running here, and you go to your content, and you go down and you go to, where is it? Flutter, Introduction to Flutter Programming here. Flutter App Programming Part 1. This PowerPoint here takes you through the main steps that you need in order to set up Flutter. So let's go on down to where it starts. You go to this link here and you select your studio, you install the SDK. So, you know, you figure out where, I always put mine in C:/source Flutter if I'm on Windows. I had a mistake here. This was called bash history. It's bash profile. And you need to add that. You also need to add this path to your Windows environment variable. So you have to add this to your bash profile if you're running Linux. And then you do Flutter Doctor, and then it'll tell you to download the SDK. You can do the Flutter upgrade. You'll install Android Studio, set up your device, and so forth. So that's pretty much the steps that you're going to go through. Would you still want the video of going through those steps, or is that going to be sufficient? I'm not sure who asked the question.
I think that's sufficient.
Okay, here I am at the end of the day. I let it finish running and everything's running fine. So I think the whole problem was I was not in the correct folder. Make sure and check when you have a folder that your lib, all the files in your lib folder are correct. So for whatever reason, it wasn't getting the correct packages and running like it should.